Hello.
Hi, hi, hi. When we
Hello.
were first chatting, we forgot to talk about my uh, Cannabis St. Patrick's Day shirt.
Oh, you have a Cannabis St. Patrick's Day shirt? This means I'm Irish. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. I'm just sporting a plain old green tee tonight. So,
But no,
and
your hair,
my
yeah,
goodness,
you're all
my amazing green hair all of a sudden. Yeah. That's for sure. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We're so excited that we are here, and we're so excited that you're here joining us. We're going to be discussing some amazing things about cannabis tonight related to PTSD. So, and also some other natural ways to combat the effects of PTSD. So it's definitely a serious subject, but we're going to bring some fun and light to it as well. And again, my name is Heather, and welcome to Cannabis Live with Heather and Amanda. Amanda, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
sure. My name is Amanda Hughes. I am in Dallas. I am a cannabis educator and an activist, and I am also a licensed esthetician and a cosmetic chemistry instructor and an herbalist. And those are some of the hats that I wear. I design jewelry too. That's a lot of hats. But I came to this plant for my own personal medical reasons over 3 years ago, I guess, almost 4 years ago. And because of my interest and my background with plants in general and with cosmetic chemistry, I had to really understand how it was helping me. I wanted to fully understand that. And then, of course, I had to share the knowledge. And so I have spent my time doing that with people. And Heather and I do this. We try to do this a couple of times a month, every other Wednesday. And before we forget, because sometimes we forget, if anyone has any topic suggestions, then we'd love to hear it. Even if it was something you think we may have covered before, maybe we can come at it from a different angle or just elaborate on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also, you had mentioned just let us, know those questions and make sure that you are posting them in the comments below. I'm going to keep my eyes on that to see if we see any questions come through. And the other thing too, Amanda, I had posted too, that if there's anybody that wants to share their experience with cannabis and PTSD, we are more than welcome.
Please.
Yeah, we would love
yeah.
that. So,
yeah. I actually have some, with permission, have some testimonies I want to share later today or later this evening. So
that would be amazing.
It's very touching and quite motivating for me to, as an advocate. I'm sure you'll understand that.
Yes, for sure. So yeah, let's get started.
Okay, so I would like to start first off because I feel like mental health is a delicate subject sometimes because I'm not a licensed mental health care professional. We talk about other physical health issues with ease, like, if you tell me you're having hormonal issues and migraine issues and thyroid issues and gut issues, then it's real easy to sort of say, oh, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you tried this? But when it comes to mental health issues, sometimes I really like to treat that a lot more delicately for obvious reasons. But I do believe that Heather and I think that we both have enough experience with medical marijuana and patients, and then me with my own personal trauma, that we can have an educated and informed discussion about PTSD and complex PTSD and how it also relates to cannabis. So let's do that. Okay. So when you ask anyone who uses cannabis for any purpose at all, the most common answer that you get is something like, it relaxes me. Like, most people will agree with that, and most people say right off the bat, it relaxes me, or stress, or rest, or sleep, or something. So because it's such a common response, I'm going to start off by saying that's a very, very oversimplified explanation as to how cannabis can assist with post-traumatic stress disorder and complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So let's define it a little bit in a real simplified way. It's a psychiatric condition that stems from experiencing a traumatic event or a series of traumatic experiences or events. So I did look this up today and found pretty consistent stats that about 8% of the United States population has a diagnosis of PTSD sometime in their life, including children. And it's nearly triple that for veterans. So for veterans, it's well over 20%.
Oh.
Yeah. So often PTSD is oversimplified when it's diagnosed. Sometimes it's diagnosed, more frequently it's diagnosed as just another form of other types of anxiety disorders, like depression or anxiety and things like that. So when it's diagnosed in an oversimplified way and not pinpointed as PTSD, it's unsuccessfully treated with like pharmaceutical psychotropic meds, and often that has 0 to maybe moderate effects on the symptoms of PTSD. You know, these meds, the pharma meds, can take weeks to work. They're often addictive. They can cause unpleasant side effects, including suicidal thoughts. That whole treatment approach seems sort of irresponsible to me. I think that's one reason why it's so important to have a good physician when you're discussing your mental health concerns, so that you don't get misdiagnosed. But they're often diagnosed because both of them can present similarly. And we talked a lot about anxiety on a couple of sessions we had back, and most people could relate to anxiety in some way, but PTSD is different than anxiety, and therefore is often treated differently than anxiety with natural remedies. So both anxiety and PTSD affect your serotonin. So your serotonin is like your well-being or your contentment, your happiness chemical. Both of them affect your norepinephrine, which is your fight or flight, and your dopamine center. So your dopamine is like your reward, something that makes you feel satisfied and rewarding. And both of them can cause severe imbalances in these levels of neurotransmitters that modulate like central nervous system activity. So often that can even result in physical symptoms, right? Even as simple as like norepinephrine can, if you have that fight or flight adrenaline, then you sometimes have gut issues, right? So both of them kind of have those effects on the same chemical. Here's the difference on the same chemicals. So here's the difference. Unlike an anxiety condition, the varying levels of all those brain chemicals have a drastic and inconsistent fluctuations in those with PTSD. So because of these sort of unpredictable, inconsistent fluctuations in these chemicals with PTSD, it would require a specialized approach, right? Somewhat different than just an anxiety condition. So often PTSD patients have a greater risk of developing sort of, they do have a risk of developing other issues, like other health issues like anxiety and depression and eating disorders and alcoholism and things like that. So if sometimes I feel like I've heard this story a lot, that because a patient might present with one of those sort of secondary conditions, they're diagnosed with those secondary conditions when the source is actually the trauma, PTSD. So the obviously there's ways that you want to learn to cope outside of medication and outside of cannabis. Obvious things like counseling and just simple connections and conversations with your friends and loved ones. But talking about your PTSD or your trauma or the causes of it or the triggers for it re-triggers trauma.
Right.
So if I'm re-triggering the trauma, then I can't heal. I can't heal through it. And so even like this little slide that you're showing right now, even to get to the point where you could do things like exercise and go to talk therapy, or for heaven's sakes, like sit down and meditate, are you kidding me? Or to have healthy lifestyle changes, it's sometimes difficult to just get past the trauma and get to a place where you can even imagine doing any of these things, even though you know these things are all important to anyone's mental health. So cannabis can help with that by offering sort of a temporary detachment. So like a temporary detachment from these urgent feelings and emotions that surround the experiences that created the PTSD. So if I can detach from that urgent feeling and emotion that I associate with my trauma, then I'm more equipped to sort of address the issue and embrace those other methods like therapy and journaling and meditation and hobbies and spending time with family and even contributing to the world professionally. So cannabis provides a way to sort of detach from the way the trauma makes you feel. So the trauma can make you feel traumatized even when you're happy and safe and comfortable where you are now. Just trying to deal with it can cause so much trouble that you can't. So cannabis helps you sort of detach so that you can use these other tools. I think that, it's not to say that cannabis is the only way, but it certainly works in a very different way than pharmaceutical drugs or alcohol. And, many people use cannabis in conjunction with their pharmaceuticals, and that's fantastic if they're having great effects. But that way maybe they can lower their intake of pharmaceutical drugs that might be addictive or toxic even, or cause unwanted side effects like benzodiazepine and certain antipsychotics.
And many of them, Amanda, too, are highly addictive. The benzodiazepines
Exactly.
and the Ativans and things, and then that could lead to, even other, more harsh, drug use and things like that. So it's like a cycle.
Absolutely. And I think that that's common enough with people that are diagnosed with mental conditions outside of PTSD. So it seems to me, and it's been my experience, that it is more common in people that have PTSD but are diagnosed with just like general anxiety disorder or depression, and then they're prescribed these pharmaceutical drugs and they don't quite cut it, but yet now they're addicted.
Yeah.
And then how often do PTSD, especially veterans, obviously have physical issues that they need pharmaceutical drugs. So now they have this whole another, contributing drug that's causing side effects. And so I think it's a really complex. It's just extremely complex. And because it's complex, I know that even doctors will say how complex it is and how difficult it is to treat pharmaceutically. And of course, people that have PTSD know that. People can use cannabis in conjunction with their meds if that's something that works for them. But also, like, cannabis can substitute for things like alcohol. So if you're a person who normally has a glass of wine after work to wind down, but then suddenly that's 2 glasses of wine or a whole damn box of wine, that's kind of a problem.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not pointing anybody out, but that's kind of a problem. That's kind of let's just call that kind of an issue. So I think like the key takeaway for a lot of that for me is cannabis can offer instant relief within a few seconds to a few minutes, or maybe even within a few days, depending on your approach. Whereas the only pharmaceutical drugs that offer instant relief are addicting.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So people start using, suddenly one Xanax isn't enough, and now you need two Xanax, or you have to take a Klonopin with it, or it's just cannabis offers you that instantaneous, and then something also that wears off to where you're able to really sort of modulate, your dosing and your approach. It's it's um it's extremely complex, and I'm absolutely not a specialist at all, but I know an enormous amount of people, not just veterans, but certainly a big portion of them are veterans, because I'm an activist, that they do use cannabis for PTSD. But I have found, even in dealing with some trauma that I have had to deal with, that cannabis did exactly for me what I just said. It created a temporary detachment from the situation or from the experience, and I was somehow able to see it, almost as if I was a spectator, and I could see things more clearly, and that helped me to be able to process it. Whereas without using cannabis, I wouldn't even think about it. I'm not going to process that. It's over. It's fine. It's over now. I'm good. But it was a really healthy way, I found, for me to be able to process it. And I've heard that experience a lot from patients. So how does it do that?
Yeah.
So here's kind of the fun part, right? So how does it do that? PTSD patients, there's some good research on this. They often have a lower level of endogenous cannabinoids, like anandamide. So we've talked about this so many times that it'll be pretty redundant for a lot of people that watch us, but your endocannabinoid system produces these endogenous natural cannabinoids within your body. And so we're primarily talking about central nervous system and brain endogenous cannabinoids, but that can be thrown off, and the balance can be not ideal. And so you can supplement with phyto meaning from the plant, phytocannabinoids. So by supplementing with these plant-based cannabinoids from our cannabis plant, you can sort of activate or engage the endogenous receptors and the enzymes that help modulate them. So if PTSD patients have a lower level of these, then that kind of explains how phytocannabinoids can help. But also, we know that, and I say THC and CBD not because those are exclusively the only cannabinoids, but those are the ones we have the most research on. So both THC and CBD can improve this cerebral sort of the blood flow that's in your brain. So if I'm improving the blood flow in my body anywhere, then I'm increasing nutrient availability. But if I'm improving that blood flow in your brain, then I can help reduce things like anxiety by increasing these hormones and the nutrients that move through the brain. So by doing that, the cannabinoids have this balancing effect on your central nervous system through the endogenous cannabinoid system. So the cannabinoids work in lots of ways. Yeah. So I have known people that don't normally have anxiety, but when they're in pain, let's say they've had an accident, so they're in sudden pain, and they're dealing with like a knee surgery or back pain, or I've had the experience, and I'm sure you too have too, of having a migraine so severe that it just makes you feel like you're just so anxious. And so sometimes if I alleviate the pain, I've alleviated the anxiety. And
100%.
like I said, yeah. And like I said, like with veterans especially, a lot of times pain is present as well. So of course, I'm not going to talk about cannabinoids only. I'm going to talk about some terpenes. So what terpenes work best for PTSD would be a conversation that would be never ending, and it would never end today, and it would never end a year from now, because we would have discovered more terpenes that helped in different ways. But some common terpenes that we know have these effects are myrcene. So myrcene being the most abundant terpene in cannabis. Myrcene works to sort of eliminate or quiet that mental chatter that goes on in your head. That mental chatter kind of loops around and increases anxiety, you know, where you're worried about something and you're like, no, don't think about that. And then you're like worried about it again. And then, no, don't think about that. And then you're worried. So it helps cut that loop off, which would kind of bring me back to the detachment factor, right? If you're not stuck on this sort of reoccurring thought that's doing you no benefit whatsoever, then that can help decrease the symptoms of PTSD, the anxiety portion. Limonene. So limonene, in addition to being anxiolytic, it's real uplifting, like physically and mentally uplifting. So I'm sure a lot of people can relate to having the experience of being so mentally low that you felt physically exhausted.
Yeah.
You got enough sleep last night. You're a physically healthy individual, but your brain, for whatever is going on in your brain, is making you just physically fatigued. So limonene is very uplifting, not just in a makes you happy kind of way, yes, but also in a little bit of a physical lift. Linalool. So linalool is anxiety and stress and insomnia. So again, with anxiety, but it's the kind of terpene that will help you sleep. If you cannot sleep through your brain chatter, then linalool helps with that. And then terpinolene. I think we talked about terpinolene last week or week before last. It's also mood lifting, kind of like limonene, but it's not quite as physically uplifting. So terpinolene can put you like in more of an optimistic sort of state. So you know, when you're looking, I never. Yeah.
So we all need that every once in a while.
Give me some of that.
Yep.
I think that I don't ever say, I mean, I'm in Texas, right? So I don't have consistent access to lab tested cannabis. So whenever people say, oh, well, what strains are good for this or good for that? We've already discussed that just because Durban poison is in this dispensary and it's in the other dispensary on the other side of town doesn't mean that the terpene profiles or the cannabinoid profiles are the same, or even that they were grown in the same place by the same grower at the same time on the same harvest. Like, so I don't like to say this is the strain for you.
Yeah.
I do. That's why I like to say look for these terpenes.
Exactly.
Because yeah. So I have some testimonies to share, because I didn't want to, this was a really important topic to me today. I know that the topics we've had up till now were very interesting, and I get really excited when we talk about terpenes, and of course I get really excited when we talk about sort of the biology of the plant. But when we decided to talk about this, I just kind of threw it out there because I was like, you know what, why don't we do this? And then it became really important to me to do it as good as I can in 25 minutes. And so that it didn't seem to do it justice. And so I reached out to some patients that I know that have PTSD and use cannabis, and with their permission, I have 3 little statements to read. I'm going to read so that I don't screw it up. But you have a couple of slides that you can share while I'm talking, but I want to tell what they are. So one of them is a photo that I took. I think it was fall 2018 at an event. So it's my hand holding a pill bottle. So and inside of it has a little army man. Well, also inside of that is a veteran's testimony on how they gave up whatever pharmaceutical would have been in that pill bottle because of cannabis. And so you can see kind of in the background, there's a whole bunch of those pill bottles. And then when you go to the next picture, it's a picture of a veteran, and I can read, I have his statement today, and I'll read his, David Bass. It's a picture of him standing in front of a coffin with these pill bottles. So that's a display that's often used the Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana is an organization that he works with, and that's a display, and it is extremely, I mean, to say it's extremely moving is an understatement. So while we've got those, let me just read David's. So David Bass with Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana. Today he said, I use a half a gram of cannabis in my PAX vaporizer 3 times each day. This cannabis is approximately 20% THC. This dosage is effective for my symptoms of PTSD. I have been using cannabis for PTSD since 2012. I was diagnosed with PTSD in 2005 after I returned from serving in Iraq with the 1st Cavalry Division. I hated the side effects of the psychotropic meds prescribed by my military docs for PTSD, and that's why I started using cannabis. And I'll add on to that, and that's why he became an advocate, right?
Yeah. And hence why many of us become advocates, because we've
Absolutely.
we've personally experienced the amazing benefits of it. So to be able to share that experience is amazing.
Yeah. So I think that's so true. I don't know a single person that advocates for this plant that wasn't touched by it somehow. If not them, if it wasn't themselves, it was a loved one or a friend, or maybe it was, for a legal issue that they had, or knew someone that had the social injustice portion of it. So, so I have 2 more. The next one is Brian Ortega. So Brian Ortega is a fierce, outspoken, sincere vet, and there is a lot of media on him. If you want to get to know David, he's just a fantastic activist, but he's also a patient. So he sent me this. This is a pretty moving. So I am a 100% medically retired Army veteran. I served as a forward observer in Iraq. My area of operations was known as the Triangle of Death. I experienced multiple traumatic events that left me with injuries from head to toe, multiple traumatic brain injuries, TBIs, along with injuries to my back, neck, legs, and knees. This left me with PTSD. The symptoms include flashbacks, irritability, and anxiety, and a few others. The symptom reduction I get from cannabis consumption is an exponential cut above anything Western medicine has provided me. I was at the Wounded Warrior Battalion in San Antonio for over a year. I was given every pharmaceutical and psychotropic medication available at the Wounded Warrior Battalion, and also through civilian medical and therapeutic intervention from 2007 to 2017, when I finally decided to move to Colorado. Pharmaceuticals made my PTSD worse or turned me into a medical zombie. Cannabis allowed me to breathe again. Cannabis took the edge off the state of hypervigilance that you get stuck in when suffering from PTSD. It relaxed my constant state of fight or flight, which significantly reduced my symptoms like flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, irritability, and anxiety. I began to feel like I did before the trauma. This allowed me to seek the help of physical therapy, psychotherapy, and primary care, and it allowed them to be much more effective than ever before. Cannabis saved my life. I am a much more productive citizen than I ever would have been on pharmaceuticals or psychotropic medication.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it helped him detach. Like we were saying, it helped him to detach, so that he could work on himself.
Right.
Yeah. So we have one last one. This one is Ramona Harrison, and her testimony is one that I vividly remember seeing the first time I saw it. It was a video of her testifying here in Texas before a legislative session, and I didn't meet her in person for maybe like another year and a half after that, but I immediately knew who she was and knew her story. And this one, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but her testimony, it's pretty available to watch. She's also with Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana. So she's a Navy vet, She was 100% disabled after suffering military sexual trauma. So, so just those 3 words is already hard for me. And I wasn't there. So she lost family. She had lost family members to alcohol abuse, but she was still using liquor to numb her emotional pain. And she tried numerous psychotropic pharmaceuticals that the VA prescribed for her. And she offered this statement for us today. She said, "I can add that cannabis has been my exit from alcohol, psychotropics, and opiates. Cannabis allows me to function in society. I have been able to replace multiple pharmaceuticals with cannabis. Vaping and canna caps are my preferred methods. Cannabis balances my moods and eliminated most of my pain. It also calms my night terrors. Cannabis was listed as a botanical in my California veteran patient info. All of my doctors have preferred that I use cannabis to pharmaceuticals." So
Wow.
keep in mind, she's a Texan.
Yeah.
So those are some good doctors, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is less common than it should be. Most doctors will not prefer it. I have a fantastic endocrinologist that not only supports it, but always has lots of questions. We talk about the plant a lot, and I'm blessed to have her because it's extremely rare to find a doctor that will support it, even if it's just to cover their own ass, right?
Very true.
And all the ones I shared today were veterans. The people that I know that that use cannabis for PTSD, their stories tend to be quite a bit more personal. But certainly complex PTSD and PTSD is being treated with cannabis outside of veterans. The thing that I get when I hear someone talking about they use cannabis for PTSD, whether they're using it to supplement their own pharmaceuticals, or whether they're using it on its own with other methods and treatments. As soon as they begin to tell their story, the first thing I think of is hope.
Yeah.
Like cannabis gave them hope where there was no hope.
I can understand that 100%. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's such a complicated topic, but I'm glad we sort of kind of touched on, why is it treated differently than other mental conditions, and why is it more advantageous? Lots of states that have medical marijuana programs and have qualifying conditions don't include PTSD because it is such a complicated diagnosis, right?
Yeah. Thank goodness Pennsylvania is one of the states that does include PTSD.
Yeah, we have a couple of bills right now in our legislative session that it's going to be added to. So we'll see, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was amazing, Amanda. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate those that you reached out to, David Bass and the other 2. I would love to listen to her testimonial. So maybe we can include that in the chat. What was her name again?
So I can put a link to it because she sent me the link that she liked. She sent it to me today, and it was the one that I had seen before a couple of years ago. And I can just put it in the comments. But Ramona Harrison, and Brian Ortega. So and I can share those in the comments if anyone's interested. But with their permission. But yeah.
Awesome.
I do think that it's important that we all share our experiences with a plant that has so much mistrust and controversy and horrible laws around it, that the more we share our experiences and sort of put a face to this plant, it's helped. It's
100%.
helped move the needle forward.
I agree with that, and we see it every day, even with physicians that we work with our Hempfield Botanicals brand. It's the progress that and acceptance of it is definitely getting so much better, and I just look forward to the time when everyone has access to it because it's just utterly life changing, and
Right.
everyone needs to be able to have those
Right.
changes in their lives, positive changes. So,
Right. Right.
Amanda, thank you
Thank you.
so excited to meet back with you again. The next date that we'll be chatting is March 31st, which is
Okay.
2 weeks from now, which is very exciting. So, if anybody has any specific thoughts, questions, ideas for some upcoming Cannabis Live topics, please leave them in the comments. We will definitely go back and check those out. And thank you again. Thank you
No,
everyone
thank
for
you.
joining.
It's fun.
Yeah, and we really look
Everyone.
forward. Yes, we really look forward to our next session. So everyone have a great evening. Please make sure you follow our pages. We do have a medical marijuana group here in Pennsylvania. So if you're interested in learning or learning about that and wanting to join that, please reach out. We'll be able to, I'll put that information in the comments too. If you are a PA medical marijuana patient or someone that's looking into getting some information on medical marijuana, even in Pennsylvania, please feel free to join that group. We're here to help in any way that we can. So we look forward to seeing everyone not next week, in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, and until then, have a great evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. Take care.